Hello and welcome back to our podcast. Today I'm here, my name is Bernadetta and I'm here with Sonia and we're going to be asking questions to David Graham. David, you are a regression therapist and life between life therapist, and you do remote soul clearing or cleansing, and you have edited 2 books. One about relationship issues in regression therapy, how regression therapy solves relationship issues. And the other one is about PT experiences that appear in regression therapy as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for calling them books and giving me the credit for them. The regression therapy into relationship issues, that was me editing a book. I did contributions, and there's several contributions from other regression therapists. So I was the person that edited it and compiled it. Yeah, and the ET one, yeah, it's.
Is it available? The book about the relationships? Is it? Can you get it online somewhere?
You can get it free as a download from the Earth website nowadays, or you could the last time I looked a few months ago.
Okay, so you will have everybody who is listening to us will have all the descriptions down under the videos and in the podcast. And David, I've got lots of questions for you about these things as we call invisible. And I just would like to start with my own story because
Sure.
I did not believe any of it when I started my regression therapy training. I went there purely because I was curious, just nothing else, just I was curious. I was not aware of anything that I should heal or should do or anything. I just was really excited about the topic. And my first experience with past lives was so profound that I thought, well, there is something about it. But then when we did the training about removing energies that don't belong to you, I was like, that's not happening. This is just all, blah, blah. That's not happening. And all these things that, like the door opened while we were talking about it, opened and closed, and then suddenly window opened and closed. It was like, okay, that's all coincidence. It's got nothing to do with a ghost or anything. I didn't believe that. And in my own session, I thought like, okay, so whatever happens, you go into deep hypnosis. And I went through some past life. I don't remember what it was. And completely at the end, there was at the training. Okay. So there was just me as a client and a therapist who was learning it. And a third person that was observing it, like a real person that was observing it. And at the end of the session, it was all like, I am going to count you back to here and now. You're going to come back to here and now in your body. I suddenly sat up and started screaming from the depth of my bottom, literally. And I had the image in my inner head or whatever that I'm pulling out some like tar glue from the back of my spine, from the bottom of my spine. And the roar that I made was unbelievable. I heard myself, it was like I heard myself roaring. And then with this huge glue thing that I pulled out, I sort of passed it to some hands that were waiting for it. It was like how I saw it. And then I lie down and I felt heavenly, amazingly, perfectly well. So they counted me slowly after some little bit of healing, counted me to come back to here and now. And they were looking at me like, what was that? What was that? It was horrible. That was horrible. So I just described what I felt and what in my imagination or in my inner vision, what I saw. And the truth is that, believe it or not, my back, that I had lots of problems with my back and lower back, never came back.
Yeah.
So the spine, my spine that was blocked for years, unblocked and does not block again.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's powerful also.
I know that you are working with this kind of stuff, David. So
yeah.
would you like to tell us?
It's also noticeable that you went into this, or you explored this without really understanding why you were doing it, and yet the reasons became apparent a bit later on. And yeah, that's an experience that's happened for me also. Yeah, but and it's also a demonstration of the wisdom that we hold within us, yet our conscious mind can sometimes get in the way and try and convince us of other realities. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's if you don't feel it with your five senses, or me, it's okay, maybe it exists, but probably not. But okay, let's see. Yeah, I know you had some very profound experiences of your past lives that led you to your work. We just talked about it briefly some time ago. I remember you went through a passage that was quite complicated for you. Can you tell us something about it, about what you had, how the past lives came up about? And
I had some past lives, a series of past lives that were very negative. And this was around the time of ancient Egypt, and I went into those lives, and it wasn't very easy. Yet, when it came to the point of why, how come I'm doing this, I realized I chose it at soul level as an experience of going into very dark places. And nowadays I can say, well, actually, it gave me more insight into some human issues than I had before that, before I recalled those memories. So what I understood also was that there isn't any judgment about it. It's not that I was a bad guy. Well, I was a bad guy, but it wasn't about that. It was about the value of the experience for the benefit of our soul, and how that enables our soul to grow or become, just grow, I think is the one. Is that the question you're asking me?
Yes. Yeah, I was hoping to get a little bit more details about the past lives, but I understand you don't want to talk about it.
I can do that. One in particular where I was connected with a temple in Egypt, where I was the guy that did the dirty work for the temple. And on one occasion, I had to, my role was to assassinate a leading religious or political figure, and I lay in waiting with a dagger up my sleeve. And when this figure came into view, he was surrounded by a lot of people, a lot of his supporters, and they spotted me. And I realized that I was in trouble here. And I started running for it, and I was deeply frightened. But after a very short while, although I kept on running, the fear I felt was about what would happen from my own supporters, my own guys in the dark area. And so on that occasion, I just had to, I died, and I split from the dark side, but it left lots of messy stuff, and there were consequences to that, which has had to be, addressed in other lives. I can talk a bit more about other ones if you want. There's one where part of my understanding that I chose this at soul level. I was born to a poor family in ancient times, and one day I had this image of two guys coming in bright brown uniforms, both the same, with a large headdress on, and they were taking me as a baby from my parents, and I grew up in a metaphysical school. There were emblems of all over the place, and I grew up there, and I learnt some of the metaphysical about the laws of metaphysics and how to use it. So I wish I remembered it all now, but I don't.
This is amazing. This is
but
amazing.
it was that led me to understand this was a soul level decision I made.
Yeah, I can imagine that this kind of past life that's not something you would want to make up. Like
no, these were pretty traumatic. Yeah. And it was also, I realized there's synchronicity about when I became aware of this. I didn't become aware of this immediately when I went into regression. It was at some point down the line when I did, and in retrospect now, I realized it was necessary for it to happen that way. So it's almost like there's a kind of some kind of wisdom that's going on in the background that we're not really aware of, and we just stumble into one thing or another, and okay. So I don't question things so much now. I just work with the feelings that come along with the intuitions, and so okay, I'll do that. A bit like you did when you went into regression and didn't really know why you were going into it.
Wonderful.
So for anyone listening to this, I would say, trust your feelings. Sometimes they don't, they're uncomfortable, but the benefits that can be gained from it can be really quite enormous. The benefits in terms of knowing yourself, I think, understanding, what you're made of and who you are. Because I was clueless when I went into regression.
I agree, me too. Yeah. David, you mentioned a few times now when you were talking about how you understood that on a soul level it was a choice, and you also mentioned about consequences from that choice that you made, which was what you said more on in the dark side. Would you mind talking a little bit about what, in your opinion, is that soul level choice, and maybe what are those consequences that you talked about?
Yeah, okay. The choice, I realised, is something that I made before I went into a particular life. I became aware that I was deciding to do this. It was me. It was my choice. No one was making me. There wasn't someone forcing me or anyone particularly advising me. I think it was more a case of, you want to do what? It's more like that. Yes, that's it. Now the consequences is that in doing that, I left a lot of beings that worked on the dark side sort of in the lurch. I was almost like if you can imagine a gangster, a group of gangsters, and one of them is the snitch. The one of them is the one that betrays all the other ones. Well, I was that guy.
Wow.
And so it was kind of like that. So I created a lot of discord, a lot of enemies there. And there were psychic attacks that were very strong. And I didn't know what it was all about at that time. Very strong, but it got to a point where I asked for. I've been dealing with them pretty well actually, but they weren't going away. But it got to a point where I just I asked for help, and I had these words come into my head, which says, "I forgive myself, and I even forgive you." And kind of on the spot, I made a mantra out of it, the energy of love, joy, and beauty flow through me, and I forgive myself, I forgive you, and a bit more stuff like that, and kept repeating it. And this attack, these people that were, this person that was coming towards me with lots of grotesque, insects, they stopped, and they couldn't come any further. It was almost like a face-off, between us. And I just stayed there in that. And they eventually drifted away. And I realised that they couldn't come any closer. They weren't able to come any closer. And in that moment, it's like all my power returned to me, is how I understand it now. But it was, pretty hairy while it was happening, because, again, you don't really understand what's going on or why it's going on. But you start to piece things together bit by bit and realize that whatever the story is, it's the actual changes that occur, the energetic changes that occur, that's important. And in that case, it was me about my power returning to me. And and it also put me in a place where I had a particular perspective of all this, where I realized that when I do spirit release work, it's not about, the light defeating the dark. I never understand it in that way. If the light is in battle with the dark, then the light is playing the dark at their own game. What I mean there, it's a bit like a football team playing in the arena of the opposition, because conflict is the arena of the dark. So I've always understood it as I'm a member of a housekeeping team, and I help to put things back where they belong, or clean things up. And it also helps if it takes your ego out of it a bit as well. Although, otherwise you think, oh, I'll beat the dark. It's not like that. So you're just doing so. And again, this is all rational thoughts to what happens. Yeah, I'm just following the feeling, really. This is one of the things I want to do. So you build your rationale around that rather than following rational ideas. You follow the. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it reminds me that this what you were talking about, the mantra that was, what was it? I forgive myself, I forgive you.
Yeah.
That it was something similar to what you were talking about in the previous episode, Sonia, about your stopping your dream and being here and now instead of playing out in the other realm. So this was more to like balancing it with the other guys, then tell them, okay, that's done, I'm finished, you go on your way, I go on my way. And you do it basically naturally, as you say. It's like a capacity, it's intuitive. You know what is good for you, you feel what is good for you. I think it's very important part of work, but also part of being. Realize really that you have the power and the capacity, and it's how you are wired, that you know what's good for you, you know what is not good for you. So thank you, David. I have another question. You're talking about, in these invisible realms, you're working in, as you say, in the gang, in the group. Okay, so I understand it that I work with some invisible beings. I am a part of them, but I have a body, so I do it down with the people I can speak to, I can touch, and the communication is more in like if you put music into music that is in your head, you put it in the musical instrument and then you play it. So I'm the instrument that is playing the music. And how do you know what you're playing? Because you were there in the gang of the bad guys, and here are the good guys that you're working with in your work. Or how do you differentiate? How do you know?
Oh, how do I know which is which? The feeling, really, isn't it? You know, love feels different to fear, doesn't it? With the bad guys, it's all about fear and control, deception, and, you know, stuff like that. And they can be quite be masters of some, you know, some aspects of that, and how to manipulate and so on. Or I found they use strategy, and there's a hierarchy going on there, and all sorts. So it's and yet it's not so much about this one way is good and one way is bad. It's one's about fear and control. The other is about being free to grow. I think that's, you know, that's a better distinction in my head, at least, about the difference. In that sense, I often think it doesn't particularly matter whether we're spiritually aware or not. It helps. It doesn't particularly matter. If I'm drawn to be a guy that fixes cars or cooks food, that's what I'm drawn to. I'm not very good at fixing cars or cooking food, so I do something else instead. So yeah, that's kind of how I understand it. The difference, and it's what it's like between feeling scared, feeling tense, or feeling repressed, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
So you're basically saying that we have this power even without, we are not spiritual, but we have this sense of recognizing what is good for us and what is bad, even.
I think what I'm saying is that we hold the answer to these questions within us. And so to find the answer, it means getting to know ourselves better. And the way to get to know yourself better is to explore and to have more experiences and notice, you know, what's happening and how it feels. Because we can talk about, oh, it feels good to go out and party every night. Yeah, if you're wrecked the next day, then, you know, notice that also. So it is also going beyond that conscious thing. If we use that analogy of a party, you know, we're, you know, yeah, we like doing that. We like having fun, or take stuff we shouldn't take, or whatever it might be. But how does it leave you feeling inside? You know, eventually, it's as you get to know yourself, you might get to understand that this is a bit of an escape from, you know, the reality of who I am and whatever challenges I may have in life. So I kind of say, yeah, whatever challenges we have in life, address them, but have fun with them also.
That's very nice. Yeah, thank you. So it's not like that the spirituality is something that everybody has to have and everybody has to grow into. It's just going with yourself and having some fun in your life and enjoy yourself and be aware. Is that how you?
Yeah. And spiritual awareness helps a lot, but not everybody has spiritual awareness. You know, they only have themselves and their own thoughts and feelings. What I'm saying is that going into those thoughts and feelings can help you to understand yourself better and why we do the things we do and how come this has happened again. And you know, what again? You know, you know, what's going on here? You know, those sort of things, or am I doing the things that that truly help me feel good, or is it an escape that I'm following? Things like that, and you sort of discern your own feelings as you're doing this, and you just become better at it the more you do it. I think that's how I see it, and it's not really to put judgments over, something being good or something being bad. It's about knowing yourself and getting your conscious mind out of the way. I think, as you were saying earlier, when you had the dilemma, I don't really believe this, but I'm going to do it anyway, and you don't know why you're going to do it. There you are. Yeah.
That was a wonderful end quote, David, because we're getting to the end of our time. Getting to know ourselves and getting our conscious mind out of the way. I really love that. Thank you so much for your time and your sharing, Bernadetta.
Thank you, David. I'm sure we're going to have you back again soon. So thank you for this. And thanks, Sonia. Thank you, all the listeners. I hope you enjoyed our podcast and something we can take something out of it.